I get distracted for some reason. I keep thinking I have
Me too.
HD or something.
Nah, you're just a journalist. That's, you're a content creator, a journalist. This is what we do. It's just my wife gets it now. It took 10 years for her to get it, but she got it. So that we don't stop. Oh,
Welcome back to
all right.
Maybe It's Me. My name my name is Jasmine Sampson, and today I have a very special guest. So I actually wrote a whole intro. So he is the person behind the 7 book series Mind Behind the Games. He's a professor at Kingsborough Community College. He's been featured in numerous publications. I have to read them out. I have to put my glasses on for this. The New York Times, the New York Daily News. He wrote for Complex?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Hockey Writers, Yahoo, Broadway World Examiner, ProHockey.com, Gotham Baseball, Syracuse Post Standards. I mean, you get the point. When he's not being a journalist 24/7 and grading papers, he's also a voice actor, and then he still makes time to be a devoted husband and father. And he has a whole pre-order happening for a new book he has coming out soon called The Job, The Birth of a Heel. And he's just a all-around solid dude, busiest guy ever, the one and only Patrick Hickey Jr. Thank you so much for
Hey,
coming on, Patrick. I appreciate
no
it.
problem. No, I'm super happy that you found me interesting to want to talk to for a little while. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I gotta ask. I'm not gonna lie. I did go through the whole LinkedIn and I went through your website and I was really trying to understand and kind of see okay, what can I talk about? Like it's also weird calling you Patrick. I don't It's just weird to
That's
me.
okay.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's I'm like, okay, what am I gonna talk to? What am I gonna talk to you about? What is it that I really am curious? But now I'm super curious. What did you write? What did you do at Complex?
I wrote an article about the PlayStation Vita remote play. So when the PlayStation Vita came out, it had this really cool function that not a lot of people knew about, that it could be used as a controller for the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4. So I basically wrote a how-to on how to make it all work properly. So I taught you guys how to write a how-to in advanced journalism. So it's I'm a geek, and believe me, that probably wasn't what I thought I was going to be writing for Complex. But when they called, the funny part was they called me and they were like, "Can you write an article on this?" And I was like, "Sure," and just did it, and you know took the money, and everything was gangsta. That's just, it was so funny they went out of their way to contact me to write that story. I was like, okay, all right, if that's what you want, then that's what you'll get.
And so you wrote for Complex. So I'm basically you're a big video game person. So I just gotta ask, what is your favorite console?
Oh my god, it's impossible. It's impossible to answer. But what I'll do is I'll just do something really quick in front of you so you kind of get an idea. So I like the Game Boy. Um, I always like the Game Boy. I'm old, so when the Game Boy came out and you could take the system with you wherever you wanted, it was so crazy. It's 1990, 1991. I'm 7, 8 years old, and I'm I don't have to be in front of the TV anymore. It was so much fun. So I'm really sentimental for stuff like that. So and then it's cool because this one right here, this is one of my comic books, Condry, and one of my readers
Wow.
from Ireland um had this made and sent it to me. So it's just it's stupid stuff like that that's just really, so it would be easy to be PlayStation 5 or Xbox 360 and stuff, but I just have a soft spot for the Game Boy.
Wow. Okay.
Hmm.
So what was your least favorite game growing up? What's a game that came out that you're I mean, yes, of course, everyone has their opinions, but what is something that you just dislike? What's a game that you are not a fan of?
um Being a historian, I try and find the positives in as many different games as possible and as many different genres, but it's just brutal honesty. I'm not a fan of like online gaming. Like I play like when I play video games, I want to be left alone. Like I don't want to play with anybody. I just want to sit and chill and relax. So it's just like I have friends that are always like, "You got to come on and play Fortnite," and I'm just like, "Nope." Like there, it's not happening. Like there's not enough money like in the world to get me to play like something like Fortnite or like World of Warcraft or like League of Legends. Like I don't want to play with anybody. I just want to chill out. I want to sit on my couch in my man cave and play like Fallout or like Legend of Zelda or something like that, or hockey, you know. So yeah, online games aren't like really like my thing.
Okay, so because you would rather be introverted versus yelling at a 12-year-old. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
not reasonable, like unreasonable. So that's
Mhm.
fair. So
Mhm.
like, have you always been just like a hockey person too? Because I know you mentioned you say you play hockey games as well. So like, what age did you get into hockey, and have you ever played?
Oh yeah, like so like I was skating probably like around 6 or 7. I got in a serious car accident when I was 18. I compressed 4 vertebrae in my neck and herniated 6 discs in my lower back. Um so that kind of like killed like any opportunities that I could have possibly had to play hockey. I played hockey like every day. I loved hockey, and I my initial like goal was to transfer or go to like a Division 3 like CUNY, like not CUNY, SUNY high school CUNY hockey program, you know, and play like they had like Johnson and Wales, Niagara. There's a whole bunch of SUNY hockey programs, and I totally like wanted to go there and try and walk on to one of the teams, but then I got in a car accident, so it was like, what else can I do at like 18? And I'm like, I think I can write. So I was in a couple of bands, and then probably like around like 19 years old, I had a conversation with my dad, and my dad's like, you got to go to school, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I went to Kingsborough and like took over their journalism program as a student. Um, I was editor in chief of their newspaper, and then went to Brooklyn College, and then the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, and then I was teaching throughout like half of that. So it's just, yeah. So it's like hockey is like one of my biggest loves, and I've spent a lot of time writing about hockey. So it's like right up there. It's like family, like my children, video games, comic books, hockey. It's like all like right up there at the top. So
So where's journalism placed in that?
oh, it's like right up in the top too. It's like so it's just like I own a comic book company now, and it's so much fun. But I still write for Old School Gamer magazine. I'm a senior writer at Old School Gamer magazine. Um, and I still write for my entertainment website, reviewfix.com, every day. So it's just like I'll never stop writing journalistically. Um, I'll never stop teaching journalism. I'm the head of the journalism program at Kingsborough now. And we are in the middle of adding 5 more classes to our program. Um, and I wrote all 5 syllabi. Like we're adding like an entrepreneurial journalism course, a legal ethics in journalism course, and I had to write
Wow.
all of that coursework. Um, so I love journalism.
Oh my gosh. So would you say at what age did you realize like, man, like I love journalism, like I love the media space, like how did you what at what age did you realize like you knew that was it for you?
Um, so like I said, my probably like my first couple of dreams was to either like be like a professional baseball player or be like a professional hockey player, and that didn't work out because of the accident, like I told you. But I mean, I remember being 4 years old and being able to like memorize batting averages from baseball players and remember how many goals a player scored in like 1981, like years before I was born and stuff like that. And my dad would think that it was funny, and when his friends would come over, he would be like, oh, how many home runs did Darryl Strawberry hit last year? And I would go boom, and they would be like, your kid's like a freak, like he remembers all of this stuff, like it's crazy. And I remember like being in like first or second grade and just being bored and writing on a piece of paper like the lineups for like all the teams in the major league. Bill Doran, shortstop Barry Larkin, third base Chris Sabo, and just going down the list, and the teachers would be like, "What are you doing? What are you writing?" And I'm just like, "Oh, you know, the 1991 Cincinnati Reds lineup," and they would be like, "Okay, all right, you know." So I've always had that nerdy bone in me, but it's like I'm a big boy, you know. I'm 6'4", I'm 250 pounds, so it's like, you know, it's like everyone always assumed that I was a jock, and I was, but then, you know, it's just like I walk into a room and people's first impression of me isn't that I'm intelligent, you know, it's just that I'm just this big guy. So kind of have to work twice as hard to convince people that I know my stuff. So so to answer your question though, it's like it's always been like a bone in me that's been geeky and loved history and loved preserving like factual data and the truth and things like that. So I've always had that journalistic bone in me.
What's your favorite historical moment?
Woo! Watergate. Watergate is pretty
Really?
awesome. Oh yeah, I mean, whew, like everyone talks about now, like all this Trump stuff about like, you know, what disrespect Trump has for the office and stuff, and it's just like the stuff that Richard Nixon was doing in the Oval Office
Was
was
absolutely
wild.
insane. They have him recorded. Did you not hear how he talked to people? Honestly,
Racist, but like I
like
mean the whole
it,
woo, it's insane. And he was reelected during that entire thing. So like you had like Trump wasn't reelected, but like Nixon was, you
it
know, and the thing is no one knew. Like Woodward and Bernstein were writing about this, but no one was believing them. No one was taking the Washington Post seriously. No one was picking up their stories, you know, and Woodward and Bernstein were getting death threats, you know, and it's just a wild time in history. Like I love it. I love Watergate.
name three historical figures you would want to fight.
Woo! That I would want to fight.
Yeah. Like no holds bar, like just bare knuckle.
Woo! That's hard. Probably Jeffrey Epstein. That would be one of them.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, because like what a piece of crap, you know. Like
Yeah.
I have a daughter. She's 6. She's the most important thing in my life. It's just like before I got married, I would jump in front of a car for my wife, and now I would run my wife over for my daughter. And I still love my wife, obviously, you know. But it's just like the fact that like Jeffrey Epstein was like sex trafficking, sex trafficking people's daughters, you know, for like all these celebrities and stuff like that. He's on the list. 3 historical figures. The other one probably Dale Hunter. So he used to play for the Washington Capitals when I was a little kid, and he cheap shotted my favorite hockey player of all time, Pierre Turgeon. So what happened was the Islanders were winning this game like 5-2, like the game was over, and Pierre Turgeon scored again, so it was like 6-2, and it's just like he like was kind of like celebrating and stuff, but he was like not a fighter, and all of a sudden Dale Hunter is on the other team, and he comes and just hits this guy so hard that he separates his shoulder. And this guy was my favorite hockey player of all time, and he was never the same after that. Like he was never the same player like ever again. And he still ended up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He just got inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame this year, so I was super happy.
Wow.
But it was like he was still a Hall of Famer in spite of it, but he could have been even greater, you know. Um, let's see, another historical figure. So that's 2. My
You
whole
were
thing is
going
like
you
I'd
were
go at
going
Dale
like the
Hunter.
no, it's just like you're going the complete opposite way that I
Oh,
thought you were
what I
going.
thought.
I was gonna be like, oh, I mean, Ronald Reagan, he can see me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
putting crack in the community. That wasn't
Oh
cool.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's um. Yeah. No. So, but we got 2. So I could still pick a third. Like I Putin. You know,
Putin is so crazy.
like the balls on that guy. You know, somebody just knocked on my garage door. It's like a Russian KGB spy or whatever.
Yep.
Can't talk about Putin, you know. But like either like Putin or Hitler. Um, like I remember my grandfather. He flew a Stuka during World War II. Like he was a fighter pilot for the German army, during World War II. And he told me a story one day. He was 14, and the Nazis just came in a church and were like, you come with us. They like didn't have a choice, you know. And it's just like, um, I'm half German, and I feel like a lot of like my energy and my hardworking attitude and my love of my family come from my German, you know, roots and stuff. But it's just like that guy wasn't even German either, you
He's
know, like he
Austrian
just, yeah, man. So it's just like that guy like
and a
really
mid-pagan.
tarnished. Yeah, I would go with probably like those three. So, but yeah, I'm more a lover than a fighter. So yeah.
Please tell me what your first thought was going through your head when you saw that man come out of the tunnel.
It was pretty crazy. Um, but I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked about it. I grew up from not grew up, but probably like 15 to like 20 in Borough Park, which isn't too far away from Crown Heights. I
Yeah.
worked in a pharmacy. Um, I was very comfortable in the Jewish neighborhood. Like they were very nice to me, you know. But it's like they are a very insulated community, and stuff like that doesn't surprise me. Like it was supposedly created during COVID, so they could traverse from like, you know, place to place without, you know, um so stuff like that doesn't surprise me. And it's just like there are stories in Europe of like trenches and things under churches, in Catholic churches, you know, in France and in Italy and stuff like that. Like we're talking like this tunnel, you know, from what they're saying, connected like three buildings. Like there's tunnel systems in, like if you read the Count of Monte Cristo from Alexandre Dumas, like there's tunnels under places in Europe. So like stuff like that doesn't surprise me. What did surprise me though was and this is so real talk. It's such a scary time to be a journalist, because you can go out there and totally report the truth, and then depending on where people stand, if they're anti-Semitic or if they're pro this or pro that, they're going to completely spin everything that you say to kind of support what they're trying to say. And it's so scary as a journalist that you can go out and you can write a story and just be like, 9 people were arrested yesterday um in a tunnel in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, and get a quote, and then somebody takes that story, and then like an influencer or somebody on TikTok or Instagram that has thousands of followers, people that have no journalistic integrity, no no journalistic morality, no sense of like right or wrong, what the news is, and they totally can make that story suit any of their needs. And it's just like it's really it's really scary.
Yeah. That's the one thing that kind of worries me about journalism, and why I feel like the state of media today is in such like, we could talk about 2016. Like I've even said, like, after Trump got elected, I kind of sort of gave up journalism for a little bit because it just felt like hope was lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't get me wrong, I'm not a CNN stan by any means, like, to each their own, but to point at a media publication and say you are fake news is, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
is detrimental, but
Sure.
it's just like really damaging. You know, you,
It's scary, because it's like I remember so I've only voted in one election, and that was when I turned 18, that presidential election, that what was it, it was George W. Bush versus Al Gore. And after that election, that's when I started to really study journalism, and I made like an oath to myself that I wouldn't vote again, because I feel like I can't write unbiasedly about Republicans or Democrats or independents if I'm registered to one of those parties, you know. And I feel like there's so many young journalism students that when I get them, they're more activists than journalists. And the thing is, like, as a journalist, like, you have to be able to go in and try and tell the honest truth, and not be like, because there are so many journalists out there that as soon as Trump speaks, they're like, oh, and it's like he could drop honesty and they're not listening. And it could be the other way around too. Biden could come in and say something, and you have somebody from the right that's just like, nope, are you asleep, Joe? And he's like wide awake, so it's just like, it's so hard to find out the truth. And it didn't always used to be that way. But it's like, I remember when I first started working at NBC, it was the Romney Obama election, and I made a comment to one of my friends that was working at Fox across the street, because we used to have lunch together. And I'd be like, every time I throw up a Romney story, it's like 3 or 4 Obama stories go up like right away. It's like they're trying to push the Romney stuff down. And he's like, you're a Republican? I'm like, no, I'm nothing. I'm like, but I'm like, it's curious to me that, like, and he's like, bro, at Fox, every time we write about Obama, he's like, there's like 8 Romney stories. So it was just like, NBC was left, Fox was right, CNN was even farther left, so it was just like, and it was just like, it was kind of, again, it's the reason, Jazz, it's the reason why I write about video games, it's the reason why I write about sports, because there's none of that there. It's like, there's no reason for me to ever mention Trump in a hockey article. There's no reason for me to mention Jeffrey Epstein if I'm writing about the Brooklyn Nets, so it's just like, I know what's going on in politics. I keep my eye on it. I've written about politics when I was at NBC, but it's just like, I feel like sports bring more people together. I feel like entertainment brings more people together, but then you have the problem of, like, so many actors and actresses use their voices to, like, spread their own, like, political propaganda, and that makes you not like them, so it's like, I'm a hardcore New York Jets fan, and then you have all this Aaron Rodgers stuff with him and Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm just like, Aaron, just shut up, like, please just shut up, like, I want to like you a little bit, like, and it's just like, for me, it's like, I tell people all the time, I'm not staying out of politics, but I would never ever, and it's not Switzerland either, because, like, Switzerland would be, like, completely neutral and not take a side and watch, like, everyone, like, burn. I'm kind of more like, okay, what's going on here? How can I report this as factually correct as possible? Then how can I report this as factually correct as possible? So it's it's hard, and it's like, I think if I would have been on a political beat in NBC, I probably would have lasted a couple of months, because I wouldn't have been able to be like what they needed me to be. Writing sports, writing entertainment is just so much more fun, because we get to do like what you're doing now with me. Just have real
Yeah.
conversation about things that people are passionate about. And to be fair, I don't think any politician is passionate about politics. I think they're passionate about themselves and the things that they have to do in order to stay in office. So it's tough. I hope that answered your question.
No, I mean, honestly, that I was just gonna ask you, like, my next question was just gonna be like, how does one like me end up at like NBC? But I'm also thinking about like how the last the last couple of years, the way media has gone so like just opposite ways, and I have to now turn to, it's just hard to find news. Like now I have to go to Google News, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, Al Jazeera has been putting out a lot of unbiased things. That's as
Sure.
far as my
No one
for
will
the most part.
ever no one will ever slight you for reading as much as you possibly can from as many sources as possible. Like,
It's
if you want to find
hard.
out what's going on, that's the best way. To answer your question, how does someone get to NBC? So the way I got to NBC was, I was in a master's program, and one of my professors, um, who was actually a big Mets fan. It's one of the reasons, and he loved the Beatles, and that's why we got along so well. Jerry Hester, amazing journalist, amazing professor. Like 2 weeks before I graduated, he's like, "There's an opening at NBC, and you need to apply." I'm like, "Oh," and he's like, "I let them know who you are. Give me your resume," and then I went in for my interview with like a $200 suit that I bought like 30 minutes before at like Men's Warehouse because I didn't own a suit. Um, and I just went in there and I told them that I would be able to do what they needed me to do and that I was comfortable with doing what they needed me to do. And they called me back 2 weeks later, and I worked there for 2.5 years. I covered 3 Super Bowls, 2 Olympic Games, the Romney-Obama election. I interviewed Paul Walker 2 weeks before he died. Like I did a lot of fun stuff there. I mean, I interviewed the creators of Guitar Hero, of The Last of Us, God of War. So I did so much cool stuff there.
Wow. And
Mhm.
so for those who, because, in this day and age, we have like the internet journalists, like the TikTokers,
Mhm.
all the things, but
Mhm.
what do you think for someone to actually dedicate themselves to journalism, what do you think it takes? Like what is the step in the right direction?
To try and be as credible as possible. So I'll give you an example. Like 2 days ago, I got a message from a student, a former student, on Instagram, and it went into my, request because he's not my friend, because I usually don't friend, I'll friend the student on LinkedIn. That's how we got in contact because it's a professional, workspace, but like Instagram and stuff like that, Facebook, that's like private. So like I would never, friend a student there. But he sent me something in my request and I got it, and he's just like, "What do you think of this as journalism?" And it was a video of a guy basically going into like one of those Chinese massage parlors, and he was like caught going in there, you know? And he was like, "Oh, what were the girls like?" Well, when it was like a gotcha moment, like he caught this guy going into like an illegal massage place. And he's like, "What do you think of this as journalism?" And I'm like, "It's not." And he's like, what do you mean?" And I was just like, "It makes for a fun TikTok video, it makes for a fun Instagram video." I'm like, "But you haven't identified this man. Um, you haven't gone inside this massage parlor and identified that it was an illegal massage parlor. Like we have just so many things that we have to do to confirm our sources and to make sure that our stories are right. And so many people now just bypass all of that stuff for the sake of getting a couple of thousand or 10,000 or a million views on Instagram or TikTok and stuff." And it's just like, I blame TMZ for it, because I remember when I was at NBC, um, they would beat us to stories all the time. And it sucked because I remember when Paul Walker died, um, I knew Paul Walker's agent because he had helped me get interviews with some of his other clients. Like he used to represent the guy that played Abraham on The Walking Dead, and a whole bunch of cool people. And I interviewed all of them, so I had a good relationship with him. So when TMZ reported that he was dead, my boss at NBC immediately calls me and is like, "You need to confirm this. You know his agent and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah." So I email his agent and I'm like, "Is he dead?" And he's like, "Yes, but we're not confirming it. We're not confirming it yet. We're not releasing. We're not doing a press release. We're not doing anything yet. We're going to wait a couple of hours, blah, blah, blah." So 4 or 5 hours later, we eventually break the story, but it's been up on TMZ now for 4 or 5 hours. They've gotten like 15, 20 million views. Where are the rest of the views going to be? They're not going to be there. But TMZ has no journalistic integrity. And this is the thing, though, too, that's crazy with TMZ is like, TMZ is rarely wrong, you know? And they get people to say things right off like the airport, the airplane and stuff. They get some great stuff, but the thing is, the people that they inspire don't do great work, you know? So it's just, we have a whole generation of people that don't want to go to school to learn how to do this properly, that don't want to learn how to write, that don't want to go to I mean, I used to sit in courtrooms and just cover stories. I would sit in a courtroom sometimes for an hour, 2 hours, and not know what room I was sitting in. Like, is this a murder? Is this? And I would just have to listen, and I would be writing down everything, and then I would be like, "Yeah, this is nothing," and then I would just get up and leave, and then I would go into another courtroom and stuff. And that's how I learned how to cover the courts. And it's just like baseball. I would go to minor league baseball games, and I would just sit in the press box and just write up stories. And sometimes I wasn't even writing for anybody, and I would just go and interview the players and then pitch local newspapers and stuff for like $20, $30 an article. And these kids don't want to do that now. It's like, they want to be in Game 7 of the World Series like right away, and it's just like whenever I find a student that is hungry and wants to do it the right way, I get super hyped because those are the people that I want to help. So it's rough.
So so when you first started, like what was the first case when you started covering like in the court cases? What was a case that you covered that you were just like, wow, like, it
The
doesn't
the
have to be like,
Stefan
go
the
ahead.
Stefan Marbury rape case, that was huge. And the thing is, like, I went to Grady High School. So Grady and Lincoln were like the two best basketball programs in Brooklyn in the 80s and the 90s. They spit out a ton of NBA quality players. And Stephon Marbury, I mean, he was a rock star in the NBA like in the 90s and the early 2000s. And when he was at the Knicks, he got accused of raping like a an intern, and then they found out that like the Knicks coach sexually harassed somebody, and the Knicks were just like, oh my god, they were just running a really like a really crappy organization. They were treating women like crap, and um I sat in on that case for a couple of weeks and wrote a bunch of stories, and that was so much fun because I was just sitting like next to like Mike Lupica from the Daily News, and like Wallace Matthews, and like all these like big time journalists, and I remember that was like one of the first cases that I sat next to the lady with the charcoal that was like drawing the pictures of the people and stuff like that. And it was so cool because it's like you see it on TV all the time, and I'm just like, Homegirl is drawing everybody here, because so this is the thing too. I'm not sure if the rules have changed. I don't think that they have, but like in New York, you're not allowed to have a computer like in a courtroom. So it's just like you're covering with like your moleskin with like a notepad, and you're writing down everything that people are saying, and then whenever the case like adjourns for the day or there's a break, all the journalists like kind of go, what do you have for here, Bill? And we're like comparing notes to try and make sure we get all of our quotes correct and things like that. So um yeah, that Stefan Marbury case, that's a big one that like I remember. It was a lot of
That's
fun.
crazy. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So when did we shift? Because I know like you have your family now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you met your wife, like did you think like how did she feel about you being a journalist? Like did she say it at the time? She's like, oh, like you're just gonna be writing 9 to 5 and then that's it? Or
Mm-hmm.
did because I know you said earlier like it took her 10 years to fully understand what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted you to elaborate on that.
Sure. I was being partially semantic when I said that, but it's the truth. So for a really long time, so like I've been a college professor for 17 years. I've been a journalist for like 20. So when I met my wife, my typical day would be like 8 in the morning to like 1 in the afternoon teaching, and then at night I would go cover like a red carpet event or screen a movie or go somewhere and interview somebody, or cover a game, a sports game, talking like MSG, things like that. So she knew that like teaching was my full-time job, but I was teaching journalism, and then like basically the money that I was getting for my articles and stuff, that was like kind of like fun money to me because like teaching paid the bills. And then I remember when I started writing my first book, and she started seeing like all the time and energy that went into it and doing all these interviews and stuff. She kind of got nice. This is like 2016, the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. She started to see how hard like my job is, because like I would just vent to her, or she would just listen to me doing interviews with people for like 2-3 hours on the phone, and she kind of like started to get it. But yeah, there would be times where it was kind of like, do you really have to like go cover this game, or like do you really have to interview this person at like 9 o'clock? Why can't you just interview them at a time that you want? And it's just like, as a journalist, you're incredibly selfless. Like there have been times I've interviewed people at 2 o'clock in the morning because that was the time that they could do the interview. Like you're interviewing me now at this time because that
Right.
was the time that I said that I was available. So I feel like my wife and I both come from like working class families, so it's kind of like you go to work and then when you come home there's like no more work. Like you're done for the day, you know? And as a journalist, that's not the way that it is. And like the last couple of years my wife has been doing a lot of entrepreneurial stuff herself. She has her own company, and she does a lot of like entrepreneurship, like events and things like that. So it's just like yesterday she had an event, she got home late and I had to put the kids to bed. So now it's like she's hustling. So now she gets it. So it took a long time because like she was a medical biller for quite some time, and so it was just like when she came home she was done for the day, and then I would still be writing. So I'm like super happy that she found this other stuff to do. So I hope that answers your question. But it's just like for a long time she was just like a regular person, and there's nothing wrong with being a regular person, but like as a journalist, I mean, you're sleeping less than other people, you're writing. Like after this interview I'm going to write for a little while, you know?
Same.
So, and it's just like it's hard sometimes to be in a relationship when because people don't understand that stuff. I mean, I had an ex-girlfriend that used to like wait in like the parking lot for me like after a game so we could go hang out for like an hour or two, and sometimes she would be like the game was over at 9:30 and you didn't come out until 11:30. Like what were you doing? And I'm like interviewing players and then going upstairs to the press box and finishing my work so this way I could go home and not do anything, you know?
Yeah.
And she, like people that aren't in like what we do don't get that stuff, like they don't understand that like the work kind of like never stops, and we
Yeah.
love that, so yeah. So it's like birthdays we're writing, you know
Yeah.
Christmas Day, if we can, we'll write a little bit. New Year's Day, if we can, we'll write a bit. The day my mom passed away, I wrote. Like the day my grandmother passed away, the day my grandfather passed away, I wrote. Because that's what I do. And so it's there's like you can't escape it, you can't run from it. It's just like if journalism was like a magic 8 ball and you're like shaking it, it's just like every time it comes up, it's gonna say time to write. Because that's like
Yeah.
that's what we do. And a lot of people don't understand. They think like what we do is fun. Like, oh, you get to go and interview this person, you get to go interview that person, you get to go hang out with this person, you get to go hang out with that person. And it's like, yeah, but then I have to write. Then
Yeah.
I have to produce the content, and that stuff is difficult.
Exactly. Like even after this I'm gonna write. But obviously like tomorrow, like I'm gonna have to edit this
Yeah.
video and then I'm gonna have to make clips for this. And then like even today, like after when I thought I sent you the link, I wrote down like new interview rule. Like I have to send out 4 drafts and schedule them out. So it's just I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I haven't written something to like publish for like something in a long time. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I find it hard for me to call myself a journalist. Like sometimes I
See,
feel
but
like I
like what you're
deserve that.
doing right now is journalism. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of like what we do. So it's just like I mean, I write every single day, but like I have a weekly podcast. I consider the podcast journalism, even though I'm talking and I'm not writing. And then like being on your podcast right now is journalism. So it's just like don't don't be so hard on yourself. And the thing is like you creating content and sharing people's views is journalism. So like you're doing journalism right now.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I started this podcast. It was like, yeah, I wanted something where I could talk about like bad TV shows I like to watch and
Mm-hmm.
even like, but I'm also a lover of information and I like to interview
Mm-hmm.
people because I like to joke and say it's because I want to be in people's business. Like if I find someone
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, like I want to know more about you.
Sure.
So I need to have you like on my show because I want to get a better understanding of you as a person.
Sure.
And so I feel like if I find this person interesting, how would no one else find this person interesting? So
Mm-hmm.
that's that's my thing. Like do I consider myself a journalist? Now I do. Yes, because like I'm
Mm-hmm.
really consistent with it.
Yeah.
I edit and I do commentary for shows like every day, every day. I have
That's the thing
so many.
too.
It's never
Consistency.
stopped. It never stops.
Yeah. And everyone that I know that's not in, everyone that gave up, like the people that stay in it are so consistent, So that's the
yeah.
thing. Just all you gotta do is stay consistent, and
Yeah,
all the
that's
other stuff is gonna come. All
yeah.
the
My
opportunities are gonna come.
my big thing is just finding like a site where I could just schedule all my posts. If I could schedule my post, I will never complain about anything again.
Make your
It's
own
just
site.
that's true. I do
That's what I
have
did.
one. I
You know.
do. It's just it's an idea. It's something I'm still working on
Mm-hmm.
because I do want something that consolidates like everywhere I have my podcast streamed,
Yeah.
including the RSS feed, as well as like
Mm-hmm.
my writing on the side.
Yep.
And I've even
And then
been
no one can
thinking,
ever take it away from you. It's not borrowed from anyone else, because like that's the thing too. It's like I was having a conversation with somebody today, and they asked about some game that came out like 15 years ago. I'm like, oh my god, I reviewed that, and they're like, oh, send me the link, and I'm like, the site doesn't exist anymore. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, examiner.com. I'm like, I was the highest like rated video game critic in the country for like months at that place, and then just one day they emailed us and was like, we're shutting down as of August 18th, and all of these reviews that are like gone forever. So it's just like, that's the thing that I love about ReviewFix. 15 years, we've got 40,000 articles on it, and like those articles aren't going anywhere, So it's like, if you create your own thing, no one can ever take it away from you, you know. And then you start talking to advertisers, and then advertisers find you, and you sell advertising on the page, and then the site ends up paying for itself. And then all of a sudden, you're making a little bit of money, and then people are sending you cool stuff to review, and you're getting opportunities to
how
go
are you
places and things.
that's the stuff that like I feel like people should hear is that just like
Mm-hmm.
being consistent and just making your own site because I have my own site, but it's just been so hard to kind of be consistent with it because sometimes I feel like I'm a better talker than I am writer sometimes, like most
Mm-hmm.
of the time.
So then talk more.
Yeah,
That's it. Just talk more. You know.
it's true. It's
Mm-hmm.
very true. Okay, well,
It's like Bill Gates used to have this thing where if there was a super difficult task, you ever hear this before?
no,
You ever hear
continue.
no? So if there was like a super difficult task that they had to get done, um, he would go to like obviously like someone that was successful in his company, but he would go to someone that he considered to be on the lazier side, because that hard task they would find the easiest way to get it done, and oftentimes that's the best way. So the thing is, like, if you need to be consistent, all you got to do is just do one thing every day, and if you feel more comfortable talking, then do a podcast. If you feel more comfortable writing, even if it's like 200, 300 words, just getting something out there every day. And then people start to realize that, like, oh my god, you're not going anywhere. They're either going to unfollow you because they can't stand it, or they're going to be like, you're going to become a part of like someone's daily routine. Like, oh, I just woke up, I need to see what's on the site, da, 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 da. And then it's like Animal Crossing. You kick the snowball, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a
Right
sudden,
on.
it's a snowman. So,
Nice. All right. Wow.
mm-hmm,
Patrick, thank you so much because that's a lot.
yeah,
Well, before we go, I do want to talk a
mm-hmm,
little bit about I want to talk about your book series and I also want to talk about your voice acting, but I kind of want to talk about the voice acting first. So like
sure.
how did you get started with that? Like how did you find your beginnings with that?
So, I've been a video game critic and a video game historian for a really long time, and I have video game developers every day send me copies of their games in various stages and stuff. Like, oh, try this demo, try this, try that, blah blah blah. And this Bulgarian team sent me their like survival horror game. You can't make this stuff up. Um, and they're like, "Oh, can you try it?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I noticed like right away that like their English was awful. Like there was typos in the text and stuff like that. And I'm like, "Guys, you should really get somebody to edit the dialogue in this game because it's gonna hurt you guys." Um, so they were like, "How much would you charge us to do it?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right." So I edited all the dialogue in the game, I did it in like 2 days, and then I thought I was done. And then they messaged me a couple of weeks later, and they're like, "Can you do another run through?" I'm like, "Sure." So then they're like, "Oh, we're going to Kickstarter. Can you edit all of the English on our Kickstarter?" I'm like, "Okay, no problem. I can do that." Um, right before the Kickstarter was about to start, they're like, "We're in trouble." I'm like, "What? What's the matter?" And they're like, "Our lead voice actor left." And I'm like, "That's not a problem." And they're like, "Why?" And so the name of this game is called The Padre. And it's about a Catholic priest that is stuck inside this mansion with zombies. And the guy sounded like Russell Brand. Like the yeah, it was awful. It was like cringy.
Wait, so the zombie, I just want to make sure I'm getting this correctly. So you're telling
Mm-hmm.
me the zombie in the game sounded like Katy
No, the
Perry's head.
priest.
The
The
okay, so the
priest.
the priest sounded like
Katy Perry's ex-husband. Mm-hmm.
okay. Wow. Wow.
And it was just not. It was cringy. It was terrible. And having edited all of the dialogue in the game, I just heard this priest voice so different. And I was like, "Let me audition." And they're like, "You?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me audition." And I've always been good at that movie trailer voice, like
In a world, one man, one tortilla, rated PG-13.
and I'm like, he
Oh.
can't sound like that because that would be ridiculous. Like
So
people
what
would
is
just
his
let.
voice? What does his voice sound like now in the game?
So the thing is, they wanted someone, like, the name of the game is the Padre, but they wanted someone with an English accent, which made no sense to me. So I was like, what if I combine that
In a world.
with the bloody, English accent of Russell Brand, like, oh my god, So it's like I combine the two to and it's basically something along the lines of like
Hello, my name is Alexander, and I am the Padre.
and they were like, yo, that's perfect, blah blah blah, and they had me record like 4,000 lines in like a day, and then they were like, um uninstall the game on Steam and then reinstall it. I'm like, okay. So then I did, and I started playing the game.
And all of a sudden, I heard my voice in the game for the first time.
Oh
I
my
was just like,
gosh.
oh my god, it was probably amazing.
It was crazy. It was so cool. And then that was the first game, and then we did a sequel, and that ended up coming out on like PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, the whole 9 yards. And oh my god, I got so much shade at Kingsborough for that. They were like, they thought it was like a joke at first, and I'm just like, no, I'm doing this. And then what ended up happening was, since I've been a journalist in the video game industry for so long, and I know so many people, and I never ask anyone for anything, I had game developers that I knew come to me and go, you do voices now? And I'm like, I've always done voices, you just didn't know, I just didn't do it. And I just did a trailer for a game called Flap Happy that's on Kickstarter right now, and it's just
One man, one chicken, coming soon to the Nintendo Game Boy.
like stupid stuff like that, but it's just like it's so much fun. I did voiceover for 4 years on this game called WrestleQuest, and that's on PlayStation 5 now and Nintendo Switch and Xbox. But the thing is, before the game was released, I did the voices of like 105 different characters in the game.
Wow.
And the world record is 34. Like 34 voices in one game by a single person. So we're in the process of like authenticating how many voices actually like got through editing, like how many voices of mine they actually used in the game. But like, I'm pretty positive you're talking to like a Guinness World Record holder for like most voices by a single person in a game. Like it's easily like over 60. So that's how I got started in voice acting, and then that was like around 2016, the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, and then it just continued, and just you be consistent, you keep doing good work. You said, like, if you tell somebody, if somebody goes to you, oh, I need voiceover by like Friday, and it's like Tuesday, you're like, yeah, I can do that. I can give it to you on Friday, and then you give it to them like Tuesday afternoon, and they go, holy shit, like, how did this guy How did he do it so fast? You know, and there'll be times where like I'm in my garage now. This is like my man cave, and I'll have my kids like sitting on the couch, and I'll have my my mic and just be doing voiceover, and they get it. They understand that like they can't scream and they got to be quiet and stuff. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun. It's a lot of work because I mean sometimes you have to do 10, 15, 20 takes of like the same thing, and then it's just like, especially like if you're doing like a fighting game or an RPG, it's like imagine doing the voices of like 100 different characters, and then you have to do the grunts for all 100 characters. So it's just like WrestleQuest, I do like Macho Man Randy Savage's voice. He's like one of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
You're a
And I'm like,
WWE guy?
Oh yeah, let me tell you something, just Nate Simpson, yeah.
and but so that's fun. But then it's just like then you'll see in the notes grunts, and you're like and you're just like, Jesus Christ, why am I doing this? But it's like the player needs that, you know. So what were you gonna ask me?
I was gonna say you like wrestling?
I watch probably like 15 to 20 hours of professional wrestling like a week. Like I love professional wrestling. Like
Wait, what does professional wrestling mean? Like, do you mean like you're just watching WWE or like?
no, oh no. Oh no. Like WWE, AEW, New
Oh my god!
Japan,
Oh my
TNA.
god! Really?
Like I've done actually ring announcing for professional wrestling before. Um
Really?
if you Google, if you I'll look for the video, I'll find it. Like I'm in a suit. I came out to like the Final Fantasy VII like boss theme, and I was special guest ring announcer, and I was like, tonight's matchup is set for one fall. You know, it was like, oh my god, it was so much fun.
Okay,
Um,
wait. So then I'm so sorry. I have to ask.
mm-hmm,
All right. So did you watch Dynamite this week?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, how are we feeling about Matthew and Nicholas talking about removing the toxic cloud from AEW, also known as Phillip Brooks? I'm gonna mute my mic and just listen to your.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. I think the Bucks are so much more charismatic than anyone gives them credit for. I think they're a great tag team. I love their legacy. I mean, I remember watching them when they were Generation Me in TNA like 15 years ago. I remember them when they were crushing it in Ring of Honor. Um, I'm super proud of like their growth in AEW. They're like obviously like one of the greatest tag teams of this generation. But like this whole storyline is really good for them because it's like when it was like, oh, call me, Nicholas and Matthews and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh my god, they're such jerks. Like they're gonna be like hated, um, but in a really cool way. And the thing is though too, like this whole CM Punk thing. I remember this is so funny. I was having sushi with Jeff Jarrett in Seattle. Um, when you can't make this shit up. I was having sushi with Jeff Jarrett um in Seattle during the entire like the first time CM Punk like lost his shit in AEW. And Jeff was at WWE at the time, and he was like, did you like, he took out his phone, he's like, did you hear about it? I'm like, what happened? And then I'm like, oh my god, blah blah blah. And he was just like, yo, this is crazy, blah 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 blah. And then all the stuff that ended up happening maybe like a month, because this was SummerSlam weekend. Because I was in Seattle for I did a panel at PAX West, which is like a really big video game convention. I did a panel on pro wrestling video game history with the MegaCat people. That's the developers of WrestleQuest. They love me, I love them. It's great.
Oh wow.
And Jeff Jarrett was executive producer on that game. So the whole CM Punk thing is like so gonna blow up in AEW's face, because it's like Jack Perry, listen, he's a lot of fun. If I had to choose between Jack Perry and CM Punk, I would choose CM Punk.
Yeah, but they did send Jack to New Japan. So he
Uh-huh.
is there now. But I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think it just doesn't make sense to have them both still under the same company because
Mm-hmm.
as you know, Philip has anger issues.
He
Philip is
does, but
also the same person that said he stopped wrestling at a specific year, and it wasn't
mm-hmm.
that year because he was still at WWE for like another extended set
You
of.
ready? You ready for something? Ready
Yes.
for me to tell you something? So my master's thesis is on pro wrestling. My master's thesis in journalism is on how someone can go from watching wrestling on TV to becoming a professional wrestler. And I interviewed like easily 50 professional wrestlers, Diamond Dallas Page, like tons, Rey Mysterio, Chavo Guerrero, like tons and tons of guys. And I'm gonna get in so much trouble for saying this. But most of them are liars, and they're awful liars. You know, and the thing is, most of them don't know what they're saying if it's true or false. Because the thing is, like, okay, I'll give you like real talk. Jeff Jarrett, one of the most honest, down to earth, respectable human beings I've ever met in my entire life. You know, the 4 or 5 times that I hung out with him, I'm just like, this is a guy that understands that pro wrestling is a business. And Jeff Jarrett, the wrestler, is very different from Jeff Jarrett, the person.
I know, Jeff Jarrett, the wrestler, is a jerk.
He's the best jerk, though. Like, you want to hate him so bad, and that just means he's so good at what he does, you know? Like, the guy used to, when he wrestled in Mexico, would throw tortillas out to the people. Like, he was such a jerk. You never heard that story before? The promoter in AAA was like, listen, I want you to do this. I want you to throw like these tortilla shells out to the Mexican people because you're like so American and stuff. And Dutch Mantel told him, like, don't do it, Jeff, don't do it. Like, they'll kill you. They'll kill you. And he was getting like beer bottles thrown at him and stuff. Listen to Jeff Jarrett's podcast if you ever get a chance. He's so smart. He's such a student of the history of the first time I met Jeff Jarrett. I was at this restaurant with the rest of the MegaCat people, and we ended up having like this 45-minute conversation on cinematography in pro wrestling. And I was talking about how much I loved Keith Mitchell, who was the lead cameraman for like WCW during the whole like Monday Night Wars, and then he was the cameraman for TNA for a long time, and then he was the cameraman for like the first 2.5 years of AEW. And I like that I like wrestling being shot like that rather than the Kevin the snake. I have a snake bag signed by Jake the Snake Roberts, like right over there. You know,
Really?
yeah. Oh, and he's a pisser too. He's so great. But he's another guy that totally understands that like Jake the Snake Roberts, the wrestler, is different from the person. You know, and the thing is, like, I feel like as super talented as Phil Brooks is, and I would love to meet him. He's one of my favorite professional wrestlers, but he might not be one of my favorite people if I ever met him. I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
you know? And I feel like him, when he came back and was like, I'm home, I was just like, stop. But the thing is, it's just like, listen, but this is what professional wrestling is all about. So there's so many. So I'm 6'4", almost 6'5", and I've stood next to professional wrestlers that were supposedly 6'7", and I'm just like, you're like 3 inches shorter than you're like 6'2", you're like 6'1", and there's no way that you weigh, because I'm not sure if you remember when I was your professor, I was a lot heavier, you know, and I'd be looking at some of these guys, and I was like 400 pounds, and I'm just like, there's no way you weigh like as much as me. You're like 230 pounds. You're not 290. You're not 300 pounds. So it's just like, it's all a mystique, you know, and I love it. But it's just like, as a journalist covering professional wrestling, it's really hard sometimes, because it's just like, sometimes you don't know if they're giving you like storyline. Like, one more quick story I'll tell you. I interviewed Paul Heyman once, and the interview lasted like 4 minutes, because it's just like, I couldn't get Paul Heyman, the human being. Like, every time I would speak to him, he'd be like, Brock Lesnar. I'm like, stop. Like, you know, and like, Paul Heyman broke into pro wrestling as a photographer. And I know personally one of the greatest wrestling photographers of all time. His name is George Napolitano. If you watch like all of the biggest like pay-per-views of the 80s and 90s, ECW, WCW, WWE, you're going to see this little short, skinny, bald guy taking pictures. That's George Napolitano. So it's like I started off the interview with like, George Napolitano told me that you used to elbow him like all the time to screw up his photos. So this way you could take better photos. Like, is that true? And he's like, oh, well, Brock. And I'm like, no, stop. Like some guys cannot, like, they can't speak to you. Like, and the thing is, like, I was working at NBC at the time, and I had taken a plane from Brooklyn to LA. Like, I flew across the country to interview people, for that SummerSlam. It was like SummerSlam 2012. It was like when Daniel Bryan won the world title and then Randy Orton cashed in on him. It was
Yeah.
crazy. It was wild. But it's just like,
Is
I'm a
that the
serious
one where they had
journalist.
to stop the fight and Brian got mad?
No,
When he
no,
was.
no.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah, he won. He beat I think he beat like Triple H. And then Randy Orton came in and cashed in on him. So it was like the fans went nuts when Daniel Bryan finally won, and then he got screwed, and that set up that whole WrestleMania in New Orleans when he finally won, when he beat like Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H all the same night to like win the title. So that was like 5 months before that. But
Oh, wow.
he could not. A lot of these wrestlers, they can't break character, and it sucks that like they connect like this fake, like, pro wrestling is not fake. Like, you cannot fake gravity. Like, the matches are predetermined, but these guys are legitimately hurting themselves for other people's entertainment. I
Enjoyment.
have so much respect for what they do, but like emotionally, some of them can't like disconnect. That's why I love watching like listening to Chris Jericho's podcast, listening to Jeff Jarrett's podcast, listening to Chris Van Vliet interview wrestlers, because he gets them to really like open up as human beings. So, but
That's me
yeah.
with Renee Paquette and the time she. Oh my God, who was it that she interviewed? Was it Dustin Rhodes? It was either Dustin Rhodes or I think it was. But I remember Renee Paquette has a lot of good.
She's great.
She's. I love her and Moxley and
She's
her little
awesome.
family. The Renee slander on AEW's got to stop. I'm waiting for Moxley to come in and start kicking people in their chest for talking to her like that. But other than that, it's great quality television. I love it.
Sure.
We literally went over the time. I was like, oh, maybe I could go
That's
for like
okay.
30 minutes. But
Yeah.
are you wearing a New World Order shirt?
Yes, I am.
Hilarious. Okay. Wow. I feel like we're just gonna leave it there. Patrick, thank you
Sure.
so much for just joining. Please come back so we can talk about wrestling again. I feel like next time
Sure.
I want to get your wrestling hot takes. We might have to play some games. This will be fun.
That's fine. I'm totally down.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you would like, please make sure you rate and review this show 5 stars. Patrick, please tell everybody where they could, buy your book and not follow you on Instagram. Promote whatever you want.
So I'm totally Google verified. If you just write in Patrick Hickey Jr., all of my stuff comes up. In addition to loving professional wrestling, I have a wrestling comic book series out called The Job, which is about a jobber by the name of Dan Dero. I'll show you guys what Dan looks like. This is Dan Dero right here. He's pretty badass. And he is a jobber. He loses all of his matches, but he's got a hot wife, and he's got an awesome car. And everyone's like, how the hell did that happen? And the answer is simple. His wife is also his valet. She accompanies him to the ring. But she also has another job that she does with him, and she is his getaway driver when he robs banks. So it's super, super fun. It's like bank robbery, pro wrestling. We've got a new book coming out in that series called The Job, The Birth of a Heel. So that's where we kind of like go deep into like one of the guys that he's about to wrestle, like for the title, the Brooklyn Grappling Association title. It's so much fun. But if you guys want more information on the Legacy comic stuff, go to Legacy Comics. It's LEGACY Comics COMIX. We have books available physically, digitally. We even have trading cards where it looks like a trading card in the front, but then in the back there's a QR. You scan the QR and the comic will open on your phone, on your tablet, and stuff like that. Really, really cool stuff. Again, if you just Google me, my Amazon will come up. I have 7 books on video game history. They're in over 2,000 libraries worldwide: Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA, Berkeley, University of Shanghai. Like, literally all over the place. Video games, WrestleQuest is actually half off from January 17th to January 31st on the Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo Switch stores. So if you're looking to pick up something really cool that has my voice acting in it, you can do that. I also voiced Nicolas Cage in the Renfield video game that's available on Steam. So if you're into vampires, I got you covered. If you're into pro wrestling, I got you covered. So just Google me. My Facebook is public. You can follow me on Facebook. My Instagram is public. Tons of fun pop culture stuff all day, every day.
All right, awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you so much. And everyone, please make sure you follow Maybe It's Me on Instagram and TikTok at Maybe It's Me.pod, Twitter, Maybe It's Me _pod. Follow us on YouTube and Twitch, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.